My parents sold our house while I was in labor alone, texting, "You wanted to be independent, remember?" But 10 years later, they cried outside my mansion begging to meet their granddaughter. "You think they'll come back again?" I asked, watching the security footage of my parents outside our gate, bundled in their regret and a thin fall coat. Saul sat beside me on the couch, Alara's drawing in his lap. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But that doesn't mean you owe them anything." I grew up in Aurora, Illinois, a typical suburb. Not rich, not poor, but very image-conscious. Our house was spotless. Our lawn always trimmed, cars washed, curtains always drawn. My parents, Martin and Celeste, were respected in the neighborhood. My father was a dentist with a small practice, my mother a part-time interior designer who mostly redecorated our own home and gave unsolicited advice to others. They were fine. Loving in a performative way. Affection was transactional, and approval came only when I was doing something that matched their ideals. I was their only child, and while they never said they resented me, they made it clear that I was expected to be exceptional. I went to the University of Michigan, a big deal in their eyes. I think they imagined I'd marry someone from a good family, go into law or medicine, and raise children they could brag about at wine tastings. So when I started dating Saul, quiet, gentle, long-haired Saul with a passion for history and no patience for country clubs, they were appalled. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't ambitious in the way they respected. But he loved me more wholly than anyone ever had. I knew early on he was it for me. When I got pregnant a few months after graduation, I was scared but oddly calm. I knew my parents wouldn't be thrilled, but I wasn't expecting what happened next. When I told them I was pregnant, they reacted like I'd said I'd committed a crime. "You're throwing everything away," my father said, face tight with disappointment. My mother said nothing, just picked at a coaster on the table with her manicured nail. They gave me an ultimatum: either move home, give the baby up, go to grad school and start over, or handle it alone. They said it was tough love. That they'd be there when I came to my senses. So I left. Saul and I moved to a tiny 2-bedroom in Kalamazoo. He was working odd jobs, I took a case manager position at a women's shelter. We didn't have much, but we were building something real. Then the baby came early. 5 weeks early. Saul was at a conference for a certification he needed. I went into labor in the middle of the night. I tried calling friends, my neighbor, even Uber, but the contractions were already minutes apart. I barely made it to the hospital on my own. In the middle of triage, terrified and alone, I texted my parents. I'm in labor. Alone. Please come." Minutes passed. Then my dad responded. "Dad, you wanted to be independent, remember?" Then another from my mom: "We're finalizing the sale of the house today. Hope everything goes smoothly." That was it. That's what I got during the scariest moment of my life. No calls. No follow-up. Nothing. I gave birth without a hand to hold, without a single familiar face. Just the nurse who wiped my forehead and told me I was doing great. Alara was born under bright hospital lights, wrapped in a pink blanket, blinking up at a world I wanted to protect her from with everything I had. I remember crying, not from the pain or the joy, but from a deep, hollow betrayal. Saul arrived early the next morning. He cried when he held her. He apologized over and over for not being there. But it wasn't his fault. The people who should have been there had chosen otherwise. We never heard from them after that. No gifts. No cards. Not a single email. They sold the house I grew up in, moved to Florida, and erased me from their holiday newsletters. Saul and I got through it, though not easily. We pinched pennies, made sacrifices. He took on tutoring gigs and night school, and I pushed through postpartum depression while managing crisis calls from young women not unlike myself. We lived off hand-me-downs and second-hand furniture, but somehow, it was okay. Because we were safe. Because Alara was loved. When she was 5, I got a grant to start my own nonprofit supporting young mothers. It was small at first, just a few volunteers and donated office space. But it grew fast. Apparently, people like stories of perseverance. I was invited to speak at conferences. I published a book. The center expanded. Eventually, I was earning more than I ever thought possible in social work. And Saul, ever supportive, started teaching college history and writing children's books on the side. Alara thrived. She's kind, sharp, a little sarcastic in the best way. She knows who her people are. Then, 10 years after I gave birth alone, I saw them again. We'd moved to a gated property in the suburbs outside Chicago. Nothing flashy, just comfortable, private, safe. Saul was helping Alara with homework when I saw the alert on our phone, motion detected at the front gate. I opened the app and stared. It was them. They looked older, of course. Smaller, somehow. My mother held a worn photo album in her hands. My father had a stuffed animal, cheap, like something from a gas station. They didn't buzz the intercom. They just stood there. I didn't go out right away. I watched. They waited for nearly 3 hours before finally buzzing. "We'd like to talk," my mother's voice crackled through the speaker. Saul stood next to me. "You don't owe them anything," he said. But I had questions. Not for closure. Not for forgiveness. Just curiosity. I stopped at the gate but didn't open it. They looked startled to see me in person, maybe expecting me to send someone else, maybe thinking I'd refuse to come at all. Celeste, my mother, was the first to speak. Her voice was shaky, not from cold, it wasn't that chilly, but from nerves. "Nora," she said. "We didn't know how else to reach you." I looked at her, then at my father, who stood stiffly beside her like he'd rather be anywhere else. His grip tightened on the cheap stuffed bunny in his hands. A pink one. Probably from a Walgreens on the way over. Still had the tag on. I didn't respond. She tried again. We saw the article about your center. About the work you're doing. And we realized, we've missed so much." I kept my arms folded across my chest, not to look intimidating but because it was the only thing keeping me from shaking. "You didn't just miss a lot," I said quietly. "You missed everything." They didn't say anything to that. My mother's eyes welled up. She looked down at the photo album in her hands, then back at me. "We brought some pictures," she said. "From when you were little." I thought maybe Alara might like to see them. That name, her name, coming from my mother's lips made something twist in my stomach. She shouldn't get to say it. She didn't earn it. "I don't know that she even knows you exist," I said. My father, who'd stayed quiet up until that moment, cleared his throat. "We made mistakes. We know that. But we thought maybe you'd allow us to apologize. Properly. In person." I studied him. His posture was still proud, his expression practiced. He wasn't crying. He wasn't even apologizing. Not really. He was showing up like a man who had finally been inconvenienced by his own legacy and wanted credit for facing it. "She was 5 pounds, 6 ounces, I said flatly. "She had a head full of hair." "Saul wasn't there when she came out." "You know who was?" "No one." They both stared at me, silent. "And you know what you sent me while I was screaming in a hospital bed alone?" I didn't wait for a response. "A text. You wanted to be independent, remember?" My mother covered her mouth with her hand. My father closed his eyes. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry, not in that moment. I was tired. 10 years tired. The kind of tired that no amount of sleep or therapy can fix. The kind of tired that stays lodged in your bones long after the wounds have scarred over. My father finally said something. "I didn't think it would be that bad. I thought you were just being dramatic." That, more than anything else, stung. After a decade, that was his version of remorse? That he thought I was being dramatic? You left me alone, I said. You sold the house out from under me. I begged. I asked for help, and you left me. He looked away. Celeste stepped forward a little. We were scared, she said. You were so young, and we didn't know how to fix it. We thought if we held our ground, you'd come back. You'd need us. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the logic of it was so warped. So manipulative. They thought abandoning me would bring me closer? I did need you, I said. And you taught me not to. The gate between us stayed closed. I had no intention of letting them in. Still, part of me stood there, holding back a whirlwind of everything I had never said. Is she healthy? My mom asked. Is she happy? She's amazing, I said. Because we made sure she would be. Despite you. She nodded like she accepted that. Or at least, like she knew she had no right to argue. We're not asking for anything, my father said. We wanted to see her. Just once. I looked at the photo album in Celeste's hands. I wondered what they chose to include. A few first day of school photos, maybe a birthday party or two. Were there pictures of me playing piano in recitals I hated? Were there images of a smiling family who looked perfect from the outside? None of it mattered now. She doesn't know you, I said. And she's not missing anything. They stood there a while longer, maybe waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. I'm going back inside now, I said. Please don't come here again without asking. I won't be this patient next time. My mother started to cry softly, barely audible over the wind. My father stayed quiet. I turned and walked away, back toward the house. I didn't look back until I reached the front door. When I did, they were still there, just two people with aging faces, holding remnants of a family they chose to break. Inside, Alara was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, drawing a galaxy with crayons. Saul looked up at me. You okay? He asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Just needed to remember who I am now. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. I sat beside my daughter, brushing a curl away from her forehead. She looked up at me, eyes wide with curiosity. Who were those people outside? She asked. Just someone I used to know, I said. Nothing you need to worry about. She went back to coloring. I watched her for a long time, thinking about how quiet the house was again. Peaceful. Whole. Later that night, I found myself in the kitchen, standing at the sink with a glass of water untouched in my hand. The hum of the dishwasher was the only sound, steady and soothing. Saul walked in quietly, leaning against the doorframe. He didn't say anything right away. We'd been together long enough to know when silence meant more than words. They're probably still sitting in their car, I said after a while. He nodded. They looked like they weren't sure what to do next. That tracks, I said. It's kind of their thing. He walked over and placed a hand on my back, warm and grounding. You don't need to carry it again, he said. Not for them. I know. But I did feel the weight of it. All of it. Not regret, not even sadness exactly, just the weight of memories I had spent years pretending didn't exist. Every now and then, they'd surface like splinters under the skin, small but sharp. And now they had faces again. Aging, trembling, desperate faces. I went up to the attic later. There's a box up there I haven't opened in years, filled with pictures and school papers, awards from high school, piano recital programs, and a few old yearbooks. I don't know why I kept it all. Maybe because I thought one day I'd want to remember what things were like before everything shattered. I didn't open it, just sat beside it for a while, listening to the creaks in the ceiling and the quiet hum of Alara's white noise machine from her bedroom below. The next morning was normal. Alara ate her usual bowl of cereal with too much honey. Saul packed her lunch while I fed the cat and checked emails. Neither of us mentioned my parents. I kept expecting something, a letter, another text, maybe even a voicemail. But the silence returned, just as it had for the past decade. This time, though, it wasn't cruel. It was just empty. Later that week, I went into the office at the center. It's funny, when you work with young mothers every day, you think you've heard every version of abandonment. But there's always a new one. And they never stop hurting just because they're common. One of the younger moms, a girl named Halima, came in for her weekly check-in. She was 19, barely out of high school, and already carrying the weight of a family that wanted nothing to do with her. She asked if it ever stopped feeling personal. No, I told her, but one day it feels a little less like your fault. I think that's what I've been chasing all these years, not forgiveness, not revenge, but relief. Relief from the belief that if I had just done something differently, I might have been worth staying for. That night, Saul showed me a letter that had arrived at the P.O. box we use for the center. No return address. Handwritten. I knew who it was from before he said anything. I read it while Alara was asleep upstairs. My parents' handwriting hadn't changed. Still neat. Still stiff. Inside were 2 pages, apologies, explanations, pleased to meet her. And at the bottom, one line that stuck with me: we don't know how to make up for 10 years, but we're hoping to start with a minute. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. Just tired again, in a different way. Saul sat beside me and watched my face. What do you think you'll do? I looked at the wall where Alara's latest painting hung. A big yellow sun with stick-figure arms. All of us smiling. I think, I said slowly, they're asking for a door that's been sealed shut for a long time. He nodded. You don't have to open it. Not even a crack. I know, I said. But it's not about them anymore. It's about her. And that's where things became complicated again. Because as much as I wanted to protect Alara from every possible pain, I also didn't want to lie. Not about who her family was. Not about why they were never there. But telling her the truth meant inviting ghosts into our clean, quiet life. For now, I left the envelope in a drawer. I wasn't ready to decide yet. Maybe I never would be. But I wasn't rushing it. The next day, the security footage showed an SUV pulling up outside our gate again. They didn't get out. They sat there for a few minutes, then drove away. They were waiting. Again. But this time I didn't go out. Not yet. Weeks passed. The leaves turned. The wind picked up the crisp, burnt smell of autumn, and Halloween decorations started sprouting around the neighborhood. Alara was obsessed with pumpkins that year. Every time we went to the store, she'd ask for one. Not to carve, just to sit by the porch, because they make the house look like a hug, she said. The visits to the gate didn't stop. My parents came every few days. Sometimes they sat in their car and left. Sometimes they stood by the intercom and waited. They never buzzed again. Never tried to talk to Alara. They just lingered. I didn't tell her. Not yet. She didn't ask again after that first time, and I didn't want to weigh her down with the kind of confusion that comes from trying to understand why people who made you also broke you. That's a lesson she didn't need at 10. But I noticed things. She was quieter. More curious about families. She started asking questions I wasn't sure how to answer. Do people stop loving their kids if they move away? Why do some kids have lots of grandparents and others don't? Did you know your mom when you were little? I always answered honestly, in a way that didn't give away too much. Yes, I knew her. And sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense until you're older. One night, as we were brushing teeth side by side, she asked, "Was she mean to you?" I hesitated, then gave her the truth in the gentlest way I could manage. She hurt me, I said. Not the kind of hurt you can see, but the kind that makes you feel really alone. Alara nodded like she understood. Then, as simply as she might comment on the weather, she said, "I hope she says sorry one day." I swallowed. She might try to. But sometimes sorry comes too late. We stood in silence for a moment before she turned to me. "Would you tell her I said hi if she ever comes again?" I didn't know what to say. I think I managed a nod. After I tucked her in, I sat outside on the porch for hours. The air smelled like wood smoke and soil. The pumpkins were still on the steps. I wondered what my parents thought when they saw them. Did they imagine their granddaughter picking them out, laughing over which one had the silliest stem? Maybe they did. Maybe they imagined a lot of things. At the center, I was giving a workshop on boundaries to a small group of moms. We talked about what you owe people, even if they're family. How to protect yourself while still being kind. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was saying the words I needed to hear myself. You can love someone and still not let them hurt you again, I said, marker in hand. Forgiveness isn't a ticket back into your life. It's a way to stop carrying their choices around on your shoulders. Afterward, one of the girls, barely 20 and pregnant with twins, came up to me. "Miss Nora," she said shyly, "how do you know when it's time to let someone back in?" I paused. "You don't know," I said softly. "Not really. You just know when it stops feeling like reopening a wound and starts feeling like protecting a scar." That night, I checked the drawer where I kept the letter. Still there. Still unread since the first time. Still impossible to throw away. Then, a week before Thanksgiving, another letter came. Same handwriting. Same P.O. box. But this time, it was addressed not just to me, but to Alara. Saul opened it. He read the first few lines, then handed it to me, his jaw tense. Inside was a short note. Handwritten again. From my mother. "Dear Alara, you don't know us, and you have every reason not to. But we know you. We know you were born brave and bright, and that you are deeply loved. We missed your first words, your first steps, your first everything, and we will never stop regretting it. This isn't a request to meet. It's just a letter to say, you're in our hearts, even if we're not in your life. Love, your grandparents Martin and Celeste." If that feels safer, there was no photo this time. No gifts. Just a letter. I stared at it for a long time, trying to find the manipulation in the words, the passive aggression I had been trained to expect. But there wasn't any. Not overtly, anyway. Just sadness. And shame. I didn't show it to Alara. Not yet. But I kept it. That weekend, Saul and I went for a walk without her, just around the neighborhood. He asked if I was okay holding on to all of this, these visits, these letters, the slow unraveling of the people I had tried so hard to forget. "I don't know," I said. "But maybe it's not just about me anymore." He didn't push. He never did. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking about legacy. About what kind of daughter I was. What kind of mother I wanted to be. What kind of woman I'd become because of, and in spite of, the people who raised me. I didn't have answers. I still don't. But the gate stayed locked. And the letters kept coming. The letters continued for several months. One every few weeks, handwritten, never dramatic or pleading, just, there. Sometimes from my mother, sometimes from my father. Sometimes both. Always respectful. Always careful not to ask too much. Alara knew about them eventually. Not because I showed her, but because she found one I had left tucked inside a book on the nightstand. She didn't react much. Just read it, then placed it back where she found it. Later that night, she asked me quietly, if I met them, would it hurt you? I looked her in the eye and said the truest thing I could. No. Because I know you'll never forget who loved you when it mattered most. I let it sit like that for a while. About a year after they first showed up at the gate, I made a decision. I sent them a letter, typed, not handwritten. Just a few lines. "You may come to the center next Saturday at 2 p.m. You will meet Alara there, in a public and safe space. This is not a reunion. This is a supervised introduction. You will follow my rules. You will not speak of the past unless she asks. 1 hour. That's all. I didn't sign it with love. Just my name. I told Alara the plan a few days before. I don't know if I'll like them, she said. You don't have to. Will you be mad if I do? I hugged her tightly. No, baby. I just want you to be smart. And I trust you to be. They arrived early. My assistant texted me from the front desk, letting me know 2 very nervous older people were waiting. I watched them through the small one-way window from my office. My father wore a dress shirt he clearly hadn't worn in years. My mother had her hands clasped in her lap so tightly I thought her knuckles might burst through the skin. Alara walked in beside me, holding a small drawing she'd made, a picture of her, Saul, and me, standing in front of our house. A dog that looked suspiciously nothing like ours was at our feet. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. Just looked at them. Hi, she said calmly. My mother stood first. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Celeste. This is Martin. I know, Alara said. You've written a lot. She sat down. My father didn't move until Alara looked at him directly. You can sit too, she said, and he nodded quickly, lowering himself into the chair like he didn't trust it not to collapse under him. The next hour was awkward, quiet, and, oddly, kind. Alara asked some questions. What was my mom like as a kid? Why weren't you at the hospital? Do you like cats? They answered. They didn't avoid. They didn't excuse. When the hour was over, Alara stood. I'm glad I met you, she said. But I have to go to art class now. They nodded. My father looked like he might speak again, but didn't. My mother just said, You're an extraordinary girl. Yeah, Alara said. I get that a lot. She left the room. I stayed back. You got 1 hour, I said. And that's all you're guaranteed. Celeste swallowed hard. Thank you for giving us that. I didn't do it for you, I said. Martin stood. We know. But, we're trying. And I'm not interested in trying with you. I have nothing left to repair. They looked like they might cry again, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. You taught me that family can fail you. But you also taught me what not to become. So in a way, thanks for that. I watched them walk out of the building with the kind of quiet that follows a storm, not calm, but cleared. 6 months later, I got a letter from an attorney in Florida. My parents were moving into a retirement community and wanted to transfer the deed to a small condo in Naples to me and Alara. No strings. Just something we can leave behind. I never replied. Instead, I donated the property to the shelter we partner with. It now houses 3 young mothers and their children. We named the program the Alara Home. When the ribbon-cutting ceremony was held, local press showed up. I gave a short speech. This home was made possible by people who walked away from me when I needed them most, I said. And now it's going to shelter those who have no one else. In a way, their legacy will finally be something good. The photos from that event were posted online. I know my parents saw them. They didn't right after that. Alara is 12 now. She's smart. So smart. She knows the story. She lived it, even if she was too little to remember the worst of it. And she knows why that house in Florida, the one her grandparents tried to give her as penance, now houses people who were never given a choice. One day, she asked me, Do you think they're proud of me? I smiled. I think they don't even know how. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't need to be cruel. It doesn't need screaming or doors slammed or grudges held until your fingers turn numb. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is thriving. Not quietly, but so loudly, with such purpose, That the people who doubted you are forced to watch you become everything they were too small to imagine. They're still out there, somewhere. I don't hate them. But I don't need them, either. We built this life from the ground up. With no help. With no shortcuts. With no family other than the one we made ourselves. And we're doing just fine.